Assalamu alaikum. This is Hena Zuberi, and you're watching Muslim Network News. Our top story tonight is Israel's aggression on Palestinians. At least 192 Palestinians have been killed, including 58 children and 22 women, in Israel's ongoing attacks in the region. But the focus on Israel's latest bombing campaign and attacks by Hamas has downplayed other violence. For the last 4 days across Israel, armed mobs with the help of Israeli police have been lynching Palestinians. These Israelis have also been burning cars, homes, and terrorizing Palestinian neighborhoods. The latest violence began at the end of Ramadan. That was when Israeli soldiers and armed Israeli settlers began expelling Palestinian families from their homes in the East Jerusalem neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said yesterday that Israel's bombing of Gaza will continue in full force. Muslim Network TV is going to bring extensive coverage and detailed analysis of the current situation from Palestine. Keep watching Muslim Network News. The world is standing up for the occupied Palestinians. Hundreds of thousands of people across the world, including the United States, are marching in solidarity. More details in this report by Ali Khalaf and Saleha Farouk.
Never be defeated! The people united!
From South Africa to Bangladesh, people are marching in support of Palestine. Communities from London to Los Angeles are also protesting the Israeli bombing of Gaza. Observers say the bombing attacks from Israel have been the worst since the 2014 bombing of the city. Palestinians were peacefully resisting the forced evictions in the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah. In Iraq, protesters gathered in Baghdad, Babylon, Dhiqar, Diwaniyah, and Basra in show of support. In the United States, people marched in New York, Chicago, Boston, Atlanta, and across other U.S. cities. Defying the French ban on pro-Palestine rallies, people did rally despite the French police attacking them. One unique feature of these rallies were the calls to end apartheid. Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem, including Human Rights Watch, have both used the term apartheid to describe the Israeli crimes committed against Palestinians.
In related news, hundreds of thousands of Palestinian Americans and their supporters rallied across the United States this weekend to protest Israel's violence. In Chicago yesterday, at least 10,000 people participated. Most were Muslim, but they included Christian and Jewish supporters as well. Similar rallies were attended yesterday by thousands in New York and Los Angeles. In the meantime, the Council of American Islamic Relations boycotted an Eid party hosted by the White House to protest U.S. support for Israel. In late April, about 3/4 of the House, including a majority of Democrats, signed a letter promoted by AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. The letter restated their belief that America's annual $3.8 billion in aid to Israel should remain unconditional. The Biden administration has approved the sale of $735 million in precision-guided weapons to Israel. But not all Democrats agree with these developments. U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders has criticized the administration for its policies regarding Palestine in a recent op-ed for the New York Times. Some leading Democrats have also questioned President Biden's commitment to human rights in his unabashed support for Israel. They're demanding that he do more to pressure Israel to end its system of apartheid and targeted violence against Palestinians. Celebrities have also been weighing in on the issue. English songwriter Roger Waters of the iconic rock band Pink Floyd, model Bella Hadid, and Mark Ruffalo, who plays Marvel's Incredible Hulk, were among them.
And I'm so glad that Human Rights Watch has now followed the lead of B'Tselem, the human rights organization, the Israeli human rights organization, that a number of months ago declared that Israel is an apartheid state. Israel is an apartheid state. Hey guys, you remember that? We're not going to play in Sun City. I thought we had something against apartheid. We certainly did when it was South Africa. Well, why haven't we got something against it now that it's Israel?
In related news, the United States blocked the United Nations from issuing a statement regarding dramatically escalating violence in Israel and Palestine on Wednesday. 14 out of the 15 members of the Council were in favor of adopting a joint declaration calling for a ceasefire, except the United States. The next statement followed a second Council briefing from the UN Special Envoy for Israeli-Palestinian Peace, Tor Wensland. It expressed deep concern about the latest situation in Gaza and called for an immediate end to hostilities. It also expressed concern about tensions and violence in East Jerusalem, especially in and around the holy sites. Council members demanded immediate cessation of all acts of violence, provocation, incitement, and destruction. They called for respect for international law, including international humanitarian law, and the protection of civilians. On Saturday, Israel bombed and destroyed a 12-story building which housed media, including the Associated Press and Al Jazeera. Established in 1846, the Associated Press is America's oldest news agency and the world's second oldest. AP President Gary Pruitt said the world will know less about what is happening in Gaza because of the bombing in a statement following the Israeli attack. Al Jazeera is an international Arabic news channel based in Doha, Qatar. Both news agencies have operated from the building for the last 15 years. The AP said that it narrowly avoided a terrible loss of life and that dozens of journalists and freelancers inside the building evacuated before the strike. The New York-based Committee to Protect Journalists questioned whether the Israel Defense Forces were deliberately targeting media facilities in order to disrupt coverage of the human suffering in Gaza. Hiba Akila, an Al Jazeera journalist, said, "This is clearly to silence the truth and voices of journalists." We'll be talking about the role of media and how journalists are reporting from Gaza later tonight in our show. Keep watching Muslim Network News. A Japanese journalist released from jail by the Burmese government says that there are at least 80 reporters in prison. Yuki Kitazumi was released after intervention by Japanese activists. Burma's military has killed more than 780 people since protests erupted following the February 1st coup that ousted the civilian government. Kitazumi spoke of prisoner abuse he witnessed, including depriving some prisoners of meals for 2 days. In the meantime, Yang Hee Lee is asking the UN to hold the Burmese military accountable for its crimes against children. Lee is the former UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights. She says that the military has occupied more than 60 schools and university campuses. U.S. Republican Representative Liz Cheney continues to criticize former President Donald Trump after being ousted by her party. Cheney was removed from her post as the third highest-ranking Republican in the House of Representatives. She's also the party's highest-ranking woman. Cheney says she regrets voting for Trump last year. She also criticized her fellow party members, saying that they were whitewashing the violence of the January 6th Capitol riot. She called this disgraceful and despicable and said those responsible need to be held accountable for it. 3 bodies and a man accused of dumping them at a New Mexico hospital are tied to the Aryan Brotherhood, an extremist, white supremacist, Nazi-affiliated hate group. The FBI says Richard Kuykendall was arrested on a federal charge of being a felon in possession of a firearm and ammunition. He has a long criminal history and is being booked on Saturday. He has not yet been charged with murder. The FBI said it suspects that Kuykendall drove the bodies to an Albuquerque hospital after a dispute relating to the white supremacist group, the Aryan Brotherhood. All three dead, as well as Kuykendall, were members of this Nazi-affiliated gang. He's accused of stashing a pistol that came from out of state after a shootout with the three men in a Chevrolet Malibu. National Nurses United is calling for the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention to reverse its advice that vaccinated people no longer need masks in most settings. The organization represents 170,000 nurses across the United States and is the largest nurses union in the country. Executive Director Bonnie Castillo said in a statement that the CDC's guidance, which was issued last Thursday, is not based on science and it does not protect public health. She said that the advice threatens the life of patients, nurses, and other frontline workers across the country, given that COVID-19 pandemic is still going on. Costello said that the relaxed rule will also disproportionately affect people of color. The CDC based its recommendation on studies that found few vaccinated people became infected and that vaccines seem to be effective against all variants present in the US. The Public Health Agency also said that new guidance does not apply to healthcare facilities, public transportation, and other types of facilities, including homeless shelters and prisons. It has also said schools should still universally require masks throughout till the end of the school year. China's Tianwen-1 spacecraft has successfully landed on Mars. The mission launched from Earth in July 2020. It made it to Martian orbit on February 10th and stayed there until it was ready for landing. Tianwen-1 landing craft held a rover about 1/4 the weight of NASA's rover, Curiosity and Perseverance. China's rover is named Zhurong after the god of fire in Chinese folktales. Zhurong is powered by solar panels and it includes cameras, a ground-penetrating radar, and a magnetic field detector, as well as a weather station. A SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket launched a new fleet of Starlink internet satellites into orbit along with 2 rideshare satellites on Saturday. This marks the company's 15th launch of 2021. The month of Ramadan is over, but some Muslims are still fasting. Let's find out more about this from Ali Khalaf and Saleha Farouk.
Yes, it is true. Ramadan is the month of fasting. And now Ramadan has come to an end. However, some Muslims still love to fast, and as such, they have chosen to fast again. Whereas fasting in Ramadan is obligatory on all Muslims who are able to, Muslims will optionally fast on other days as well. It is normal to fast for 6 days after the end of Ramadan, and once Eid celebrations conclude. Muslims choose to fast these additional days for the love of the Prophet, who also used to fast these days, peace be upon him. He also fasted Mondays and Thursdays, as well as 3 more days in the middle of each month. These are all optional days of fasting.
Coming up after the break, we'll be talking to Palestinian journalist Yusuf Haq on how journalists in Palestine are reporting the Israeli aggression and the role of international media. Keep watching Muslim Network News.
So it's nothing extraordinary what we do. It's just a human to human, like brothers to brothers and sisters to sisters. Nothing else, nothing more.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Walking up and down the world's largest refugee camps, I met Sister Fatima. Well, I'm calling her a sister. She was just a teenage girl, my granddaughter's age. Her parents were slaughtered by the Burmese military, and she was dragged by the Burmese soldiers to their hut, and all night long she was violated. She lost consciousness. When she regained, and in the morning and soldiers were themselves away, she ran and hid in a vegetable patch. Some people saw her, gave her clothes, and took her 4-day-long walk to Bangladesh. Who will speak up for her? Who will stand up for her if not you and I? It's our responsibility. It's our duty, brothers and sisters in humanity. And that's why I like you to support Burma Task Force. I'm a volunteer for it. But Burma Task Force is standing up to stop this genocide, violation of our sisters. You and I are free, they are not. Please stand up, work with Burma Task Force, and donate today to Burma Task Force. Together, we can do it. Assalamu alaikum.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Welcome back. We have with us today Yusuf Haq, who is a Palestinian journalist, the head of Gaza TV News. He's a political analyst and commentator based in London. Thank you so much for being with us here today, Yusuf.
Thank you for having me.
So, Yusuf, you had covered the 2008 and 2009 Hamas-Israel conflict, as they call it, 2012 as well, when reporting from Gaza. Can you share with us your experiences on the ground then and how connected you are with what is going on right now?
Okay, first of all, it's an aggression. It's not a conflict between a Palestinian resistance group or Israel. It is an aggression against the Palestinian people. Israel does not need justification to attack the Gaza Strip. As a matter of fact, when I was reporting in 2008 and 2012, it's a very dangerous situation in the sense that Israeli warplanes destruct targets across the besieged territory, and the targets, including civilian areas, media offices, hospitals, mosques, infrastructure, schools, you name it. So I was reporting around the clock in 2008 for 21 days. And in 2012, I was reporting for 10 days around the clock. And also, let me remind the viewers or the listeners that also Israel committed an all-out offensive in 2014, which lasted 51 days. And this current offensive aggression on Gaza, it's a collective punishment. Total destruction was caused. 200 Palestinians have been killed so far. The vast majority are civilians, if not all of them, including 60 children and 40 women. It's dangerous for journalists to report from the ground because if you saw a few days ago, the Israeli warplanes struck Rise high building, which was housing two major international media outlets, that is Al Jazeera channel and Associated Press, in addition to many local media offices and also clinics and medicine centers. The journalists are reporting in very dangerous circumstances, but whatever Israel does, that will not deter them from continuing reporting on the ground. We are still getting news feed, stories, videos. Everyone in Gaza is a citizen journalist. Everybody who's got a smartphone can report, can send videos. So the world is watching. Israel is going with its aggression against the Palestinian people. It does not differentiate between a fighter or a civilian. Massacres are being committed as we speak right now. and the world is watching. It seems that they deal with the Palestinians as subhumans, as if they don't deserve to live, as if Israel has got the upper hand, who decides what's going to happen. So it's unfortunately, it's a conspiracy of silence of what's happening. The world is not intervening. Israel has got a powerful propaganda machine. They justify their attacks by saying some fighters are using these civilian facilities. But when you see that the tanks and the drones and the warships and the ground forces, they attack without mercy, randomly, indiscriminately, you can tell who's the victim and the victimizer.
Can you tell us more about this Al-Jala building where the offices were located? Associated Press president has also released a statement on this. And they say that the Hamas offices are in the same building. It might be so can you tell us more about this particular building, where it's located? And it might seem like an obvious question, but why target media offices?
I reported from this media building. It's Al-Jala Tower that houses media buildings. It's in the center of Gaza City. It's a 12-story building, and it's known for the media activities there. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, the Israelis, they can claim anything. They can justify their attacks by giving false information. I don't think the Palestinian journalists will allow any military activities to take place in the building, because that will give Israel an excuse to attack the building. So there was no activities whatsoever for Palestinian fighters in the building. It attacked the building because it wants to silence the Palestinian voices. It wants to impose media censorship. But journalists are still continuing to report from the van, from the road, from the rooftops. Everybody's using their phone, the live stream. It is a way to scare local and international journalists, and even an official from the AP, Associated Press. He said, even if military activities was taking place in the building, Israel has no right to level down that building. It's not justified reason just to say any excuse. And this is not the first time, by the way. Two other buildings were attacked. In the previous 3 wars, media offices were attacked. So this is the nature of Israel. It wants to silence the truth. It wants to cover up its crimes by attacking, scaring journalists. But as we speak, TV screens are live, streaming live, and the international community has to take action now to put an end to these violations.
You spoke about citizen journalism, and a Palestinian journalist was wounded in this strike as well. What is life like for journalists living in Gaza? And please tell us more about these citizen journalists. This is something, social media helped this phenomena. What have you seen good results from this? And what can people do to highlight these citizen journalists?
It's dangerous for Palestinian journalists and cameramen, photojournalists to report directly from Gaza, even if they were wearing the bulletproof vests or helmets. The drones can see them. Their cars are marked with TV press stickers, but they still can be attacked. Israel deals with the population of Gaza, whether they are doctors, journalists, you name it. They deal with them. It deal with them as a collateral damage. As it's like fish in the barrel. It kills and maims and always straight away rushes to give justifications. So with the rise of the internet, in the light of the technology and smartphones, people in Palestine, especially in Gaza, they rely on social media platforms such as YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, to live stream what's happening without censorship, without editorial agenda, sending, posting videos, breaking news. The world is watching. It's the Western traditional media no longer can stay idle or hide the truth or ignore reporting, because it will be embarrassing for them, because the footage is being transmitted as we speak right now. It's a very powerful tool. It embarrasses the Israeli regime. It shows the world that Israel is attacking civilian population. I'm astonished myself from the bravery of Palestinian journalists. Have you seen that footage where this Palestinian photojournalist was filming from the rooftop? He was filming a rise high tower as it was attacked by Israeli occupation forces. So we have accustomed to such evaluations, and sometimes journalists are stripped from their feelings, emotions, because they have accustomed to these killings and scenes of destruction and so on. They have a duty to do. It's a moral duty to report and expose these crimes so that the whole world can see what's happening.
So one of the things that I really wanted to talk about is the coverage, what you talked about, Western traditional media. What are you seeing in Western traditional media, mainstream media? How is media covering this right now, this act of aggression? And then I want you to compare that what you're seeing coming from Arabic-speaking media, Arab media, Indonesia, Malaysia. How is the world media, global media, covering this crisis?
Well, the Palestinian cause is a universal, just cause. It's not a cause between Jews and Muslims. No, it's a conflict between oppression and justice. We have a victim, we have a victimizer. We have an occupying power and people under occupation. So obviously there are people who support the Palestinian cause. It's a just cause. There is a growing mobilization, solidarity campaign. Those who believe in the right of Palestinians for self-determination and freedom, they report the story, they side by the Palestinian cause, whereas some of the Western traditional media who don't care about the Palestinian issue, who are allying themselves with the Israeli regime, who are being backed by their governments to beautify the Israel of image, to beautify Israel's image, they are not reporting the story. They don't give enough time to the Palestinian point of view, Palestinian narrative. They manipulate the facts. I'm talking about some of the Western media. I wouldn't generalize. But as I said, with the rise of the internet, they cannot really sit there and not report what's happening. There is a shift, to be honest. I witnessed in recent years that there is somehow, they try to show that they are balanced, but we still have a problem with the way how they convey the news. For example, let's talk about Fox News. Let's talk about CNN or some of the other Western media outlets, whether it's in the UK or Europe or elsewhere or Australia or Canada. They will always put the subtitle or the title as Palestinian rockets were fired from Gaza and Israel responded. They don't tell you that it is Israel who who started this offensive. They just straight away they put the blame on the Palestinian side, on the victims, because they have a policy. They have the Zionist lobby is active in those countries, and they are being supported by those Zionist organizations. So they have to protect the image of the Israelis. This is the problem we're having. They don't address the root of the problem. They just address the reaction of Palestinians. They talk about rockets. They don't talk about the civilians who are being massacred and maimed right now. They don't talk about that Palestinian blood is valuable. They deal with the Palestinian issue as if it's a burden, as if Palestinians are subhumans, and as if the Israelis, who are God's chosen nation, who deserve to live, whereas other people, they have to die.
And we see this too, that as soon as there is a bombing, then the internet goes down, as you were talking about earlier, that people are live streaming, and this hurts citizen journalism from there as well. And definitely we see a disparity between coverage here and around the world, but things are changing. I wanted to ask you, do you see solidarity from more solidarity from other countries this time? We've been seeing oppressed communities come together for Palestine. In London, Colombians and Tigray, folks from Tigray joined together on Saturday to march. So are you seeing more solidarity?
Yes, indeed. This time I witnessed there is a huge demonstrations. There is growing solidarity in countries that we haven't seen before, like in the Caribbean, for example, South America, in Asia, even in India, Bangladesh, of course, Pakistan, some Arab countries. We appreciate those demonstrations and this solidarity, but what's needed is a real pressure from from the governments of those nations to call ambassadors and protest against these violations, call ambassadors and complain. Those governments, they have a moral responsibility to stand by the oppressed people in Palestine. And this aggression, it's not only against Muslims, it's also against Palestinian Christians in Jerusalem, in Nazareth, in Bethlehem. So the occupation does not differentiate between a Palestinian Muslim or Palestinian Christian. Palestine is a cause that should be resolved. Palestinians have been fighting for self-determination. They have been fighting for liberty, for freedom, and they want their rights to be restored. We don't have a Palestinian independent state. We have a self-ruled autonomy. Palestinians are fed up from the occupation, from the checkpoints, from the curfews, from the siege, from the killing, imprisonment. Our lives are miserable. Israel enjoys a culture of impunity. They have never been held accountable. They want to continue controlling us forever. They control what's into Gaza, what goes out of Gaza. They control our sea. They control our life. They deal with us as slaves. This is the mentality. They are not willing to give up their occupation. They are not giving up to allow us to have a normal life.
Well, thank you so much, Yusuf Al-Halou from Gaza TV News. We'll be right back after these messages.
Our fellow Americans.
Right now, the COVID-19 vaccines are available to millions of Americans.
And soon, they will be available to everyone.
The science is clear. These vaccines will protect you and those you love from this dangerous and deadly disease.
They could save your life.
So we urge you to get vaccinated when it's available to you.
That's the first step to ending the pandemic and moving our country forward. It's up to you.
Friends, our world is pulling together like never before. We're making huge sacrifices to keep one another safe. Scientists are working non-stop to develop COVID-19 vaccines and treatments. A vaccine will get our economies moving. It will tell our loved ones we're safe again. But we have challenges we must address. Right now, huge pharmaceutical companies are keeping the vaccine research a secret. They're deciding how many vaccines get made, how much to charge for them, and who gets vaccinated. This will no doubt leave billions of people behind. Pharma companies are putting profit, not people, first. Yet, billions of dollars of taxpayers' money is funding their work. We cannot let the CEOs of a handful of pharmaceutical companies decide our future. We need a vaccine that everyone can have free of charge, no matter where you live or whether you're rich or you're poor. We need companies to share all their research so we can make enough safe vaccines for everyone. We need a vaccine owned by all of us. To end this COVID-19 pandemic, we need to pull together once more.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
To get the latest update and the current situation in Palestine, let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid, who's with a Palestinian educationist living in the Gaza Strip.
Thank you, Hena. What is happening in Gaza? What happened in Gaza when Israeli start bombing? Do Palestinians have shelters to hide in Gaza? Is there a system to warn people that Israel is about to bomb? And so what actually happened there? So we have today a Palestinian professor right from Gaza with us. Since connection is problematic, we have been trying for a while to connect. Sound, there may be some voice lag and all that, but stay with us. This person is right there from Gaza, Professor Rafat Al-Arir. He teaches literature at an Islamic university in Gaza. Welcome to Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for having me.
I read your article in the New York Times that your brother and a large number of your family members were killed by Israeli bombing a few years ago. Could you share with us how many members of your family were killed?
I'm talking about in the previous 20 years, there have been about 15 families who were killed by Israel. My uncle was killed almost 45 years ago. My father's brother was killed under interrogation in the 70s. And since the beginning of the Second Intifada, many family members were killed by Israeli fire and Israeli missiles. In 2014, we lost 5 family members. One of them was my brother, but other family members of the distant family. In addition to relative of my wife, she lost 3 of her uncles, her brother, her sister. Her sister lost her husband, and also 3 of her kids, and she also lost her grandfather to Israeli aggression. And as I mentioned, this could be anybody in Gaza. Anybody in Gaza was hurt by the Israeli Zionist occupation killing machine. We have personal pain, and we have been impacted personally with our family members.
Why do you think they selected your home or your house? Is there a method to this madness?
It is madness. Thank you for using this word. Israel is a racist apartheid regime based on ethnic cleansing. When we talk about an aggression wave on Gaza, we talk about thousands of houses and buildings destroyed. In 2014, Israel destroyed and damaged about 20,000 housing units. And in Gaza, we have huge families here. The average, I would say, 7, if not more. So if you multiply that by 7, 20,000 homes damaged, it means that so many people are displaced, so many people are homeless. And even now, Israel is also targeting homes, huge residential buildings where you could have 20 families. Each family could have an average of 7 members. So this is indiscriminate in a way, but at the same time systematic. Indiscriminate because Israel wants to kill as many as doing the 3 days ago. Israeli planes bombed the internet access point nearby and damaged a lot of hardware and wires. Why we have very poor internet connection. Sometimes we don't have internet connection at all.
I fully understand that.
Thank you, sir.
So we understand that, and we will keep coming back. So little by little, we are able to tell, because you are right there in Gaza and you are impacted by that. Tell me this: when Israeli planes are coming, is there a alarm system which inform all the people in Gaza that this is the time for people to be careful?
We don't actually, because Gaza is very small. It's as small as some counties, some small in America. In the past, Israel used to create sound by the F-16. You know how loud they could be, and even if you hear the plane, you still can't run away because you have like less than a moment. And more importantly is that there is nowhere safe in Gaza. There is nowhere to hide. There are no shelters. And Israel is targeting Palestinian homes when people are asleep in the middle of the night. When people go out to the street, they can be killed by missiles. When they go to UN, United Nations shelters, they can also be killed, like what happened in 2014. So there is no safe place in Gaza. And there are no Allah to warn the innocent, defenseless civilians to run away or take cover.
So there is absolutely no shelter system that if bombs are coming, people can run and hide someplace.
Yeah, definitely no. There is no system or pattern or war.
You know, Gaza is like the size of in US city, Detroit or Philadelphia, and where all these bombings taking place. But who are the Palestinians? Were they always living in Gaza Strip, or they came from somewhere else? Who are the people in Gaza? Why they are living in that type of situation? Why don't they move away?
Gaza is been here for hundreds of years, for millennia. We talk about what happened by Sykes-Picot and the borders between the places here in the Middle East when they divided and partitioned the Arab world and the Muslim countries in a way to create more tension. People would come one place without having to have a visa or a passport. But Palestinians have been here. We are certainly the descendants of the Canaanites who lived here 4,000 years ago and even more. And those people continued to live here. when other people moved, the Arabs came from Arabia, Saudi Arabia, the Arabian Gulf, and the Jewish people came from places from Iraq and Egypt later on. There were so many hostilities, but there were times that people in peace. If I want to take you back to the time of Khattab, when he came to Jerusalem, there were no Jews, and he when he's the issue is that the Christians were there and the Muslims and the Arabs, and then later on the Jews to be in Palestine. And when that came to Jerusalem, they also dismissed the Jews. They kicked them out and they killed them. And later on, Muslims and Jews coexisted peacefully until the Zionist movement more than 150 years ago. They want to go to Palestine to create a national home only for the Jews. So the problem is that Zionism as a racist entity decided that native Palestinians who already exist in Palestine should be removed, should be killed and displaced. This is the problem here. We don't. This is not an issue between us and Jews, because Palestinians. This is something not many people know. 70% of Palestinians are Muslims, but also 30%, about 30% of them are Christians. And those Christians are also subjected to Israeli hostilities, aggression, harassment. Israeli Zionists burn the mosques as well as they burn the churches. They harass Muslims and they also harass Christians. So, our issue.
So in Gaza, are all the people, Palestinians who live in Gaza, are there some who were refugees?
Yes.
When in 1948, 1944 to 1948, when the Jewish terrorist group Hena was harassing people, so are there some refugees in Gaza, or all of Gaza is refugees?
Most of the population, we have about 2 million people in Gaza, over 2 million people. Most of them are refugees and the descendants of refugees. Like you mentioned, in 1948, Palestinians were the Jewish militias armed by Britain and empowered by Western countries at that time. In the 30s and in the 40s, so the horrific Holocaust against millions of Jews. They came to Palestine and then were owned by Palestinians and coexisted until later on the Palestinians realized that many of those people want to ethnically cleanse us, to kick us out of Palestine. And this is sadly what happened in 1947 and 1948, when different Jewish Zionist groups attacked Palestinian villages, killed many of them, hundreds, thousands of them were killed, and dismissed over 750, about like close to 100 to 1 million Palestinians were displaced from the cities. Now, many of those people came to Gaza Strip. They were pushed into Gaza. So in Gaza, we have over 1 million G's and I would say 1 million and 200,000 from Gaza refugees, the children and grandchildren of refugees killed by Israel. So those people want to return to their villages, want to return to their cities. We simply can't leave. If the Israelis bomb and massacre us in order to leave, then everybody is going to be aggressive in order to kick people out. That's why وَلَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسَ بَعْضَهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ لَفَسَدَتِ الْأَرْضُ. Allah dictated on people to defend themselves. If people don't defend themselves, then the whole world is going to be turned upside down. Or you need to come to your home and to give up. So this is part of the issue, especially in Gaza nowadays. But every time there is a bombing in the distance, it impacts the internet.
That's all right. So right now, as we're talking, bombing is going on.
Yeah, it never stops. If you can't hear it very close, it's because Israel is bombing in distant areas from where I live, in Rafah or in the north. But most of the time, any bomb around the Gaza Strip could shake the whole area. It's like a small earthquake, each one of the missiles.
So bombing is a marathon. I mean, it's not that it is done in 1 hour and then there is a 10-hour break. It is going on every moment in Gaza.
Exactly. It's unpredictable. There is no timing. And it gets more intense at night, where last night, for example, there were over 120 bombs. And when we're talking about one bomb is I think of a quarter or something like this. It destroys a whole building if it falls on a particular building. But usually they throw like 2 or 3 or 4 to make sure that they destroy the place totally, or if they are targeting somebody to kill instantly. And that is in itself is a horrible thing because it's very unpredictable. And go on, sir.
Why do you think Hamas insists on sending rockets, which hardly does any harm, although so many, then Israel bombs back and kills so many Palestinians? So why Hamas insists on giving excuse to Israelis to do these things?
Hamas is not the problem. The problem is not the Palestinian resistance. The problem is the occupation itself. In the West Bank, there are no rockets. And Israel killed 12 Palestinians in the West Bank just last week. In Jerusalem, you've seen the pictures, the videos from Jerusalem. There were no rockets in Jerusalem, and there were no guns in Jerusalem. But we've seen how brutal the Israeli occupation police.
So, share with me, your house was bombed, your brother died, and so many members of your family died. So were you able to rebuild your house? Back to you, Hena. It was a difficult interview because of 6-7 times he will drop off and pick up. And he mentioned that each time a bomb is thrown by Israeli, somehow internet get disconnected because the communication building was the first building which was destroyed. Second building which was destroyed was where the media was there. So connection with Gaza is difficult. But whatever interview we're able to do, it tells us a whole lot that there is no alarm system when airstrike comes. Airstrike comes most often at night. We also learn there are no shelter. And most of all, himself, our guest, Professor Afat, and his wife together have lost a whole lot of people in the multiple bombing. And he says this is the story of Gazan people. Most of them are already refugee.
Thank you, Imam Mujahid and Professor Al-Arir. That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Keep watching Muslim Network TV. For more, visit our website, muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.
Special thanks to our official supporter, Zagat Foundation of America.